Good afternoon, this is David Stevenson of Worldwide ERC. Thanks to everybody for standing by, and welcome to today's Worldwide ERC Learning Zone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank today's sponsor, CapRelo. Today's is entitled Executive Relocations, the ABCs of VIPs. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping announcements. If you experience any technical difficulties joining the WebEx session today, please dial 866-779-3239. Email questions may be sent to support@webex.com. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you have a question during the presentation, you may submit it online. To submit your questions, use the Q&A tab located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. Simply click on the tab, type your question into the dialog box at the bottom of the screen, and then click the send button. Please, all questions selected during this webinar will be answered publicly. We do expect a high volume of questions and will attempt to answer as many as possible. Is eligible for 1 CRP and 1 GMS credit. If you hold CRP and or GMS designations and would like to receive credit for this Learning Zone webinar, you must utilize the recertification credit forms, which are available on Worldwide ERC's website in the Certified Relocation Professional section under Education and Training. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Chris Finkel is the Director of Client Development with CapRelo. He has extensive 16 years of experience in global corporate relocation, as well as a real estate background. Prior to joining CapRelo, Chris spent 6 years managing a full-service relocation program and overseeing all aspects of the relocation process. Chris has held his Certified Relocation Professional designation since 2001. Northrup is the Director of Customer Care, Government Services and Pricing and Contracts at JK Moving. She has more than 20 years of experience in all aspects of international shipping and household goods management. And of JK's Customer Care and Government divisions, Katie designs custom relocation packages for private sector companies, government agencies, and the military. Prior to joining JK, Katie worked for Interstate Van Lines. Juan Washington is the Inventory Resale Inventory Coordinator at CapRelo. With more than 27 years of experience, he is an expert in the management and administration of government and corporate single-family home sales and purchase programs. Juan's in-depth knowledge of lending institutions, mortgage servicing activities, foreclosure process, real estate management, and disposition of corporate-owned assets. As Inventory Resale Inventory Coordinator, Juan uses his broad experience in the industry to manage the real estate sales and monthly forecast process, home inventory, and real estate broker selection. Juan also holds his Certified Relocation Professional designation. I'd like to welcome our panelist speakers and hand the presentation off to Chris to begin.
Through and explore the different aspects of moving executives. I'm going to go through some different slides to talk to you about the sensitive nature and importance of a successful executive relocation. Juan will go through some of the real estate aspects, and Katie will go through some of the household goods aspects. Basically, starting out, wanted to just kind of go over, some of the high points of moving an executive, the needs of a busy executive and their family, and the importance of making the transition as smooth as possible. Starting with an experienced counselor with the knowledge of executive relocations is always very important. And this also brings me back to an area where, we, myself, have moved quite a few executives around the country and around the world, and some of the different aspects of what they require during their move that's a little bit different than what a standard move is. On the slide, we see that we did move a wine collection for a CFO. We've cared for an entire storage unit full of plants. We plants stacked up in a glass-enclosed storage unit for 2 months and had to water them every day. It was quite an interesting task. And things that we do like that kind of are different and a little bit, more sensitive in nature than your standard relocation of a non-executive. The aspect that we're going to discuss in this portion is the importance of a successful executive move. And success meaning, the company has placed a lot of money and effort into recruiting and bringing this person on board, and there's a lot of importance in making sure that the transition is as seamless to the executive and to the company as possible. So it's going to require quite a bit of extra services, extra hand-holding with higher touch than you might normally have with an executive relocation. So when it comes to executive relocations, providing the full-service benefits above and beyond what the standard policy may or may not offer is something that we're going to explore and go through, and we can see how we can kind of successfully make the transition as easy as possible. Next slide. What executive relocation services? That's a good question. Executive services kind of are an enhanced policy, as I like to call it. Most corporations will have an executive level policy which offers, extended relocation benefits, more time in temporary housing, a longer time in storage and things like that. But there are some aspects of the relocation that an executive may need that aren't actually identified in a relocation policy. Executive level policies may include exclusive broker use or executive broker assistance. Private schools, settling in services, which is a huge destination tool that a lot of companies find help make the move so much more smooth in getting into the new location. In many cases, even though companies have written formal executive policies, they be a little bit more open-ended than your standard relocation policy because the executive level person may have some out-of-the-box needs that the actual policy may not discuss. So that is where the relocation company and the account manager is really important in making sure that the client is made aware of the different aspects of the relocation that may not be addressed in the policy. And again, meeting the specific needs of an executive may not fit into your standard policy, but will probably require a lot of additional resources in finding, for example, specialized pet care, walking someone's dog, destination services, sending in services which are really an unusual service that go way above and beyond just the unpacking of their household goods. It may be personal assistance. It may be putting dishes away, washing clothes, things of that nature that go beyond your standard policy. Private school assistance is something that a lot of executives find that they need, and that's a much more entailed policy of school search than your standard just finding schools in the area, their ratings. There are interview processes, and there are a lot of other things involved in private schools in getting in that require extra time. But I mean, in what executive relocation services are, really anything that's going to help the executive employee get relocated. And again, I say they're open-ended in the sense that a lot of them you experience for the first time. Go on to the next slide. Interestingly enough, why corporations and why companies offer executive relocation services, a company put a lot of financial investment in their top-level executive talent. For the candidate, process and process of making sure that they've identified the top-level candidates or top-level in their companies, there's an awful lot of financial investment and level of professional investment that they do to bring these people on board. If they have to move them, which in most cases they do, the executives really making sure that they're focused on, getting acclimated to their job as quickly as possible means that they don't have time to pay attention to the household goods and the selling of their home and all of the other nuances that come through with this. So what they do is they rely on the relocation companies and our professional services to make sure that we can take on that service. A couple of things that are interesting in an executive program is that, you got your counselor focused on finding top-level brokers at origin and destination and helping them attain information on how quickly they can sell their home, what their marketing time is going to be like. At destination, you want top-level people showing them the focus on the neighborhoods and getting them into areas that they want to focus on, as far as having to not spend a lot of time doing that. And in many cases, a successful executive relocation not only focuses on the executives themselves, but on the spouse and family, and in some cases, more often, the spouse and family are the focus of the relocation instead of the executive. Services, that time at the new location is critically important to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the location, and there are a myriad of details get them from point A to point B with them having to stress out about it or having to deal with too much of the details. So offering executive relocation services really is stepping up to a higher level of attention, service level offering, and making sure that every need that they have is being taken care of in a pretty efficient way, without having to, involve the executive in too many decisions, really kind of making sure that the spouse, family, or extended family is well taken care of and comfortable. Takes us on to destination services, and I really did kind of put a lot of emphasis on that, because in many cases, again, the executive who's going to work for a company has a mindset or a focus that they get into the new job, get acclimated, and get focused on the mission at hand, while you have more of the spouse and the family that are concerned about where they're going to live and the schools they're going to be going to, and how they're going to acclimate themselves to the new area. Destination services really, when it comes down to it, helps to create the most comfortable transition for the spouse, the family, the executive. Again, this particular, even everyone's involved, whether it's the executive, the spouse, and family, they're all involved in this. In many cases, it's more focused toward the spouse and the family, because they're the ones who are going to have the time and have the interest in making sure that they've found the right and most comfortable location. Area orientation tours are done at a candidate level, or they're done prior to a final decision, but they're also done at the beginning of relocations and throughout the relocations to make sure that the family, the spouse, even the employee feels comfortable with the surroundings, whether it's nightlife or whether it's religious looking for churches or schools or shopping, or proximity to work, so they're not battling rush hour traffic. Specialized home finding assistance is really selecting that right broker and selecting the professional who's going to focus exactly on what they need. Juan will probably go more into that once he talked about the real estate section. Settling services I spoke to about earlier really are an extension of assistance to the spouse and the family in making sure the house that they've selected as their permanent residence gets set up as quickly as possible, and so they're comfortable and ready to go to live in the home. So they're not surrounded by boxes. They don't have a lot of dishes on the sink. They don't have beds to make. They don't have clothes to hang up in the closet. All those things really do make them get set up quickly. And personal assistance is a really specialized that can help, really, again, more toward the spouse. I've done some personal assistance for a couple that moved to California, and the wife had a lot of needs to get acclimated into the area socially, and she really needed someone who had been living there a long time to help her really understand, and we were able to get her a personal assistant who had an intimate knowledge of the social networking of the area that she was going in. It really helped her a lot. Back to area orientation tours, again, these are tours that are specifically pinpointed to help the family, including the employee or the executive and the spouse and family, or help them get acclimated to the new area as early as possible. These tours are really conducted with the assistance of personal real estate people. And they start even before the family gets to the destination. They may start with these assessment calls to identify the areas of importance for the family, whether it's schools, whether it is neighborhoods, child care, could be elder care. But this starts before the family, the executive and or the family ever get to the area of orientation. And it helps the professional destination really focus and zone in on what they need to do to show the family and the executive the areas of importance of which they need to see. Again, it's all about being efficient destination to make sure that the comfort level is there for everybody. The area orientation tours, I feel, are so effective in making sure that the family feels that they've been taken care of and that their needs are being met and they're being heard. The executive feels comfortable that they are getting the choices that they would like to see in destination, whether it's housing, whether it's schools, houses of worship, shopping, nightlife, whatever they want as part of their particular lifestyle is being shown to them so they feel more comfortable in making the transition. It's important for the entire family, executive and family, to know where they're going and what to expect at the location where they're going. Whether it's a major metropolitan area or more of a rural setting. There are differences in where they locate to what they want. And one of the funny things, we did an area orientation tour for an executive into the Boston area. He and his wife had grown children, and they were already, empty nesters, and so they didn't want schools, and they didn't want all that stuff associated with family. They wanted nightlife. They wanted to get back out there and start dancing again. Really focused our tour for them more on suburbs of just close to the city because they wanted to be able to get into town, to go to dinner, go to clubs, to hear jazz. That was their focus. Even though, they lived in a suburban home for many years and raised their children, their new focus. So that's what we did for them. Home finding for an executive is really, it's more challenging than a standard home finding in the sense that you're looking at homes, specific types of homes, specific neighborhoods, specific sizes of homes. They could be a little larger with a few more amenities than your standard home. Interestingly enough, did some home finding for an executive and wife in the Washington, D.C. area, and their focus was really on the country club that they lived near. They had friends who were part of a specific country club, and they were anticipating joining that country club. So they wanted to focus their search for a home within relatively close proximity of the country club. Problem: these are some of the areas in which that having good home finding brokers who know the executive level client are going to be able to help them in that area. I had another executive coming into Washington, D.C. who knew exactly where he wanted to go, but wanted a specific type of home in a specific price range. And, there are real estate brokers all over the place, but there is a specific real estate broker in Washington, D.C. that really focuses on this and price range of home. I was able to get these executive and his wife connected with this broker who did an outstanding job and sold them a very expensive home as if it was nothing. It worked very well, and it made, again, their transition much easier. And again, in home finding and destination services, a lot of times the executive is totally focused on things at work, traveling, and it is the family and the spouse that really need to feel like they're being pampered and taken care of so that they feel more comfortable in the move. The executive has already made the decision to make the move. It's the joint family and spouse that really probably need more assistance in feeling comfortable with where they live and they tend to relocate, which I think is ultimately important in not only the home finding, but the orientation tours and destination services, all designed to make sure that the settling in is as comfortable as possible. That's kind of the settling in services, and this is a really kind of a niche service in the sense that it isn't used on a regular basis. It is used primarily for an executive relocation. It tends to be expensive, more expensive than your standard household goods moving services. It's a bit more extensive in the care and the service it provides. There are a limited number of companies that do actually offer this as a service level. But if you find a very good van line with a very good move management division, you will find that they will have these types of services for you. And Katie can probably go into some of that when she's discussing some of the move management services that help executives. Filling in services really are a destination, and they, to limit them and saying this is what they do would be too limiting. Real settling in service is anything that the executive, spouse, or family may need to help them get settled at their destination quickly, efficiently, and comfortably. Now, some of the items listed here: cabinet organization, interior, exterior house cleaning, dishwashing, and decorators, are but a few things that are standard in the settling in services. I had an executive that I moved into Santa Monica, California, and had to hire a professional art decorator to place the art in their home. Now, I myself have the eye to know which Renoir should be hung on what wall, but I was able to find the service that would show what statue looked better where and what Renoir looked better in the foyer. That is really kind of how extensive settling in services can be. And it really is important because you get requests from executives that, boy, I wouldn't even begin to know how to do that. But there are really excellent companies out there that have concierge-level services that can help with these types of things. And again, complete unpacking, putting all the clothes in the closet or the drawers, the closets, hanging up the dresses. The list can go on and on. I think, again, in making this successful right here, and the settling in services can really make a relocation for an executive much, much better. In fact, the executive relocations, get them out of the origin, it was very standard, but getting them into destination and making sure you met all their needs was the challenge, and this is where it can really make your relocation much, much better. Personal assistance is another specialized, highly specialized service that, again, is not used very often because it really is kind of personalized or exclusive service that most executives use. These are people who really just kind of take over the day-to-day needs of the executive or wife or family for specific items or pinpointing specific needs that they have. It's something that the really busy executive, it's just invaluable to them. They just don't have the time to help in some of the areas that their family may need in the transition. I was talking earlier about hiring a personal executive or a personal assistant to the spouse of an executive that we moved out to the West Coast. The services the spouse needed really were in helping her get organized in charities. She was a very philanthropic person. She wanted to be very involved, which is what she did at origin, and this is what you'll find in executives. What the spouse of the family was used to as a lifestyle at origin, they want to keep with ultimate destination. And her focus and what made her so happy was being involved in worthwhile charities. And she'd never been to this area of California before. She just didn't know where to begin to look for them. So we were able to hire a personal assistant for her, someone who lived in that area and was involved in a multitude of charities that she could introduce the spouse to. It turned out to be very successful. I had a conversation after setting the service up with the spouse, and she was very thankful for it because it really helped introduce her to the area, to different charities, to society, to the area in general that her husband didn't have the time to do for her. He was very grateful because, of course, if she's happy, he's very happy, and it has kind of a snowball effect, as it were. The personal assistance is a very specialized service, and it's not needed on every executive relocation, but there are times it's needed, and it does make a big difference. And again, more focused on the spouse and family probably than the actual moving executive. But something that I think is invaluable if it really helps the executive and or family get acclimated to the area more easily. At this point, I'm going to take my leave and introduce Juan Washington, who's going to kind of go over some of the aspects of executive real estate service.
I'm Washington, and I want to start out by giving credit where credit's due. So let's I'll cite our host finding to the slide that's in front of us. Worldwide ESC's 2012 Transfer and Cost Survey indicated that one of the challenges in an employee's relocation or choosing to relocate is and purchasing a new home. It is one of the top reasons employees chose not to relocate or chose not to want to relocate. So relocation managers overcome this challenge, or shall I say, how to rise to the challenge. The answer is in our service delivery. Cite a couple of buzzphrases, one of which Chris pointed out earlier, some I have used and abused over the years. I want to call it top hat service. There's that I'm going to show up at the executive's front door and blind tails. Second one, which I have used and abused over the years, is the red carpet experience, which comes up for those of you who love the Academy Awards. You conjure up the idea of Academy Award ceremony or entering the White House before sequestration. The third one is connoisseur treatment, which Chris alluded to earlier. And sometimes it kind of reminds me of the movie Pretty Woman and the gentleman who's standing behind the desk providing any kind of service that Ms. Gear requires. So when it comes to the high-end real estate market, the thing we need to point out that we need to do up front is to identify the top real estate brokers in the markets. We need to research the markets, sales history, and the present market conditions. We need our homework up front in making sure that the selling and buying process is easy and convenient to the transferring employee. So let's go to the next slide, where we're talking about the home selling experience. I want to share with you one of my own personal experiences. Years ago, I relocated the president of Washington, D.C.'s telephone company. Called her office, spoke with her secretary, arranged to meet her in her office, She's most gracious and charming. I'm starstruck. I started out by asking her questions about her home, and the first thing she told me was, quote, "You really need to talk with my husband about this," quote. Point. I quickly shifted gears, sent her relocation package, and we spent the next 45 minutes talking about her company, vision for the future, and goals and objectives. Shortly after the meeting, I placed a phone call to her husband and scheduled the time to go over the relocation package. The lesson learned here was executives are focused on running their companies. They don't have time to sell a home, what they expect us to assist them in doing. So we have to be cognizant of their time schedule. We have to be prepared before going in with our assessment. In doing that needs assessment, we really do need to, and not afraid to ask who the decision maker is in the process. Gain permission to work directly with that wife, that partner, that significant other, that financial consultant, whoever that decision maker is identified. That's who we should be working with in order to ease this process and expedite the transferring employees' relocation experience. When it comes to executive level brokers, we need to pre-screen our brokers. Knowing upfront our real estate market, knowing based on our needs assessment what that employee has to deal with in terms of their home sale, knowing what they are looking for, we need to do as much as possible up front to do the research to pick this broker that serves that area. And we need to pick relocation-trained sales associates that can carry through the same experience in terms of the top service that we have set the bar. We want to be able to work with the executives and the families in the home selling process. Let's go to the next slide, which is home purchase. And back to what I stated earlier in determining or identifying the decision maker, be a wife, a partner, or significant other. I've heard personally more than once, you satisfy this individual and you'll have a successful move. That in mind, when working with the decision maker, we need to identify the specific needs of the transferring employee and the family. What the price range of the home, the location, what special schools. If property needs to be located on the 9th green, or in my case, at the foot of the chairlift, up the ski slope. It's our important factors. That's what needs to be identified, and that's what we need to work with. We need to know what the specialized or identify the specialized knowledge and benefits that the executive is focusing on, so they don't waste a great deal of their time in determining what they're looking for, and help them remain focused on their jobs. As I stated earlier, when working with or identifying executive level brokers, I'll use an example of what I've seen recently on HGTV. Not plugging the network, I'm not plugging any specific show, but I'm sure that if I state that it showed that where the one selling the New York little apartments in the high-rise buildings, or the guy who's selling the California oceanfront views, I think those of you who have watched the network have an idea the types of agents that are accustomed to working with our high-end transferring employees and our executives. The caliber of individuals that we're looking for, the folks that we're looking for that have the experience in working with or selling and purchasing or being transfers, purchase high-end properties. We want to make certain, once again, that they're relocation trained and that they have the experience of working with folks who are in the high-end price range and working with the executives and their families. As location managers, we should also have up our sleeves in terms of having preferred mortgage programs available. We should have our own network of attorneys or title companies available. And in terms of working with the transferring employees, issues arise, we need to be their advocates. We need to come to the table with solutions to any problems that come up. Really, probably most importantly, when the move is completed, we need to send a very nice housewarming gift. Doesn't be a room of furniture like on HGTV, but something local and tasteful is the most appropriate. Katie, you want to take it from here?
Sure, Ron. Thank you, Warren. My name is Katie Archer. I'm with JK Moving Services. I'd like to speak today about the moving processes for executives. Coordinating the household goods moves for top-level executives is very similar to project management. Aspects must be taken into consideration, such as the executive's family's needs, security needs, determining what really matters most to the executive itself. It matters most. We can focus on that and build the move around it, and that helps us maximize the satisfaction, properly manage the move needs, as well as minimize any stress. The not the executive's moves are very short notice, and they're often very, very large moves. That's very logistically challenging, especially when you get to particular times of the year where resources are actually very tight. The best way to manage this is if the HR team has a very well-qualified move management team, a movement group that has the resources that can handle any kind of service move as well as an executive move at the same time, has the logistical resources to do it without skipping a beat. It has to be done internationally as well as domestically because the challenges on either way can be they can actually delay the executive being able to arrive and get to work on time, as well as increase the stress in an already stressful situation. The executive, the provider, can actually add to the benefit of the whole move experience. Having a move manager on site can be there to target and anticipate any type of disruption, any type of matter that's coming on, whether it's the actual dates of the move, the locations of the different move dates, or the coordination with the staff of the executive to make sure that it goes smoothly with the amount of disruption to the family. Most suppliers on your executive corporate moves are going to handpick crews that have background checked, they're security cleared, and that have the training and knowledge on how to properly handle whether it's very in furniture or it's challenging furniture with creative pieces, or able to simply handle the decorations and window treatments and things like that most of the executives already have. You do have security needs often on a lot of these moves. Probably the highest security that we had to address when we moved a couple of the presidents of the United States out of the White House, former Secretary of State, as well as several of officers in the military service that have various security concerns, and you have to be able to provide the right teams to go in and handle this. Again, the most efficient process, not delaying anything, and focused on accomplishing the goal with minimal amount of disruption. Services, as Chris was speaking about, would be such as maid service, put away service, being able to assist when you're arriving in a home. Sometimes you'll have carpentry services that need to be performed in order to install television sets, surround sound systems, things like that. If your moving provider work with your concierge or your RC, he can take care of those things so it's seamless to the actual executive, and he can get in and get to work and be on point without family being disrupted working with these things. A movement group only takes care of all of these challenges so they don't affect the executive, but they protect the actual company and the client. They manage everything to the scope of policy. They make sure that everything is approved. They have the best resources in order to manage any kind of cost, as they do auditing. They do pre-auditing, post-move auditing, manage to policy. Executives, they want a smooth move. They want their family to be moved in the most efficient process and the stress-free process. They also want to make sure that we manage the policy. Ultimately, the management group has to have a group of suppliers. These are the people that actually are there in the home with the family. These are the problem solvers. They are on scene. They bring their experience. They work with the family to make sure things go smooth. They work with the staff. They overcome the logistical challenges, whether it's weather, whether it's storm. We've had hurricanes. We've had blizzards. And to make it seamless to the family, to be able to be in and out so the executive can be exactly where he needs to be, when he needs to be, that's the best supplier that you can have. We've had several executives we've had to move back in country that have not even had the time to be on site, and we've literally had to go in and manage the origin and the destination. So everything is packed up, removed from the home secured, move across the country, have it delivered, installed, set up. With the concierge, everything is set up so the family arrives and they're good to go. And it's seamless to the executive itself. The family is happy with the new home, and the executive didn't have to miss any work at all in order to affect the move. Art, unique items such as Chris was discussing, wine collections. Wine collections are very difficult to move. You have to make sure that they are at a specific temperature at any time. Otherwise, you could ruin their wine collection. And some of these are hundreds of thousands of dollars. You cannot make a mistake when it comes to the wine. Cars can move with the shipment, at the shipment, after the shipment. They can move in a van, out of the van. Again, it comes down to the group of suppliers that you have, and you need to have the resources available any time of year, especially when you're speaking of the high season. Otherwise, the executive will get to the other side and not be able to have a car to get to and from work. Secure and controlled storage on some of the furniture, especially if an executive is going to be going to an overseas post. They have their furniture and or other items secured in a climate-controlled facility. This is where it's best to have a good management group that has the experience to know who the providers are in those locations to reach to and secure this type of storage to make sure that all of the items are properly protected. Resources. The best part about a move management program is the fact that you always have the resources anytime, any time of year, any time of day where you can reach out to your move management group and they can take care of any of your moving needs. The executive knows that they're going with the right providers and all of the items are going to be secure. Managing cost and managing risk. This is also where a move management group can really benefit an HR team. When they vet a supplier, they are looking at not only their performance record, their customer satisfaction surveys, they're looking at their clients' claims that have filed, the nature of the claims, doing a full review, and they're taking into consideration their safety scores through USDOT. All of these combined are what really provide a report card of each supplier, and that gives the move management team the best recommendation to assign any mover to a move. And movement groups also have buying power. Because they are moving people all the time, year-round, suppliers are going to work to make sure that they perform. They have a true vested interest in the outcome and making a successful move for every executive. In order to meet business goals with executive services, you really have to combine all of these different programs together to have a successful reason for a corporate executive. This includes destination services, real estate services, household goods services, and the specialty ancillary services that we can all provide. CapRelo, JK, and industry experts can provide these services to make it a smooth transition. And I'm going to hand this back to Dave Stevenson, see if there's any questions.
This does wrap up the end of our formal presentation. At this time, our panelists will be happy to answer questions you may have. I see have already come in throughout the presentation. I'd like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, please type them in the Q&A box located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen, and hit the send button, and they'll be able to review them and answer the questions for you. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to begin moderating the Q&A. Chris?
All right, we've got some questions that have come in already. One of the ones I see up there is, do you handle household good claims differently? Kate, can you answer that one?
You actually sometimes have to handle claims differently because you have to look into the scope and magnitude of the claims. Most of the times, carriers will do their best to handle them as quickly as they can because obviously a claim can also be another stressor. They will look at the scope of the claim, the nature of the claim, and see whether or not there is actually any responsibility on the part of the supplier. If there is, the suppliers almost time will step up. Almost every claim that I deal with is handled within 10 days, and that's from date of filing till the date of closing. The last thing any supplier wants to do is ruin a great move by hanging on to and dragging out a claim.
Okay. Another question we've had come up there, really what best practice for international policy when it comes to executives. I guess the question there is there anything special that needs to be taken into account?
There are, if you're speaking to the actual household goods, there are special considerations, both documentation, incredibly important on international moves, as well as the timeline. On timelines, it can only take between 60 and 75 days to get an executive shipment to and from their location. So you really need to take that into consideration when you're planning when that executive has to be in his seat at his new position, as well as the documentation that's required. Otherwise, your shipment won't move.
Great. Another question I see up there is, this might be for you. When you get to avoiding waiting lists on private schools, some areas, probably even the D.C. area, they have some 2-year waits on some of the list. Is there a way to get around that? I mean, how do you handle those kind of waiting lists, for that?
In the private school areas, especially in Washington, D.C., there are waiting lists to get into certain schools. I'm not certain that I'm familiar with how to get around it as much as if you have an executive and their family coming into the area, you really want them to start looking as early as possible so you can determine what these wait lists are. There are ways around them. I think if you're persistent to getting around them, but I think really it's in front of the school search and making sure that you can get into a school if there is going to be a wait list, that you have any other options. But getting around a wait list is not as easy to do. Maybe who you know or who might know someone in the area that can help you out.
Fantastic. Got another question up here. It's kind of maybe a little bit more general question, but have you seen clients utilizing home find search differently in recent years? With so much information available online, are you finding employees are doing a lot of that research? And Juan?
Again, I have to say I love this question because I wanted to bring it up in the presentation, learn to embrace technology. Answer your question, if the transferring employee executive out there who doesn't go online to the various websites beforehand to do their own research, they're not in this day and age. So, in truth, as relocation managers, to have that conversation with the employee and embrace that technology and embrace that research that that executive or decision maker has done up front. Many times I have used this as a means of fact-finding. I've had many transferring employees site-specific, home-specific locations, and I've delved into their questions or I've delved into their research and to find out what websites they're looking on, specifically which properties, and I made note of that information and shared that information with the relocation director, with sales agents, so that they know up front that what they're dealing with. Because in truth, there's so much information that is available out there on through the internet that you shouldn't really see this as a hindrance any longer. We should take advantage of this information that's available and view this, make our process a bit more transparent, because I think that many of the employees that I've worked with, they find out that once I find out that they're working as hard as I am in making this process easy, it also helps me to help them narrow down their process and narrow down their search in terms of where they're located and also in terms of what type of properties they're looking at, both on the home purchase side.
All right, thanks for that. Another question that came up, and Katie, I don't know if you can address this, is there ever any exceptions for VIPs in regard to moving prohibited items?
Well, the first answer to the question is no. There are no exceptions with respect to prohibitive items. Those are prohibited for a reason. Most often than not, that's for safety issues and safety concerns, or it might be for law based on, for instance, hazardous materials and that. But what we can do and what we always do is we sit down with the executives, we educate them with respect to what the different prohibitive items are, then find alternate resources for them, such as it might be a prohibitive item because of safety in that. It might be something that you might have an issue with because it's plants. People have some very nice and expensive plants, but plants going to and from different states might be prohibited. So it's not really a health hazard, if you will, or anything like that, but we would aid them and maybe find out an alternate resource that they could, or an alternate means in order to handle that. If there's other things, we would try to use the resources to accommodate as best we can and manage that.
Chris, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I wanted to just add on that. I agree with Katie. I think moving toxic or hazardous materials or legal items we just can't do, but we had quite a few odd requests over the years. And I had an executive that we moved into this area, into the Reston area, a few years ago, and she had 6 horses in Texas, and her policy didn't cover moving 6 horses, but they said, yep, move her 6 horses. So we had a company that shipped her 6 horses from Dallas, Texas to Reston, Virginia. So, you know, it's. I agree with Katie. What's within the law and what's within reasonable, but if the executive has an unusual request, typically we get it done.
Okay, great. And so we've got another question in. So we had talked about earlier buyer incentives. Can you provide for real estate? Can you provide examples of what kind of buyer incentives might be used in a real estate transaction? Juan?
Well, Jim, actually, Chris pointed out one earlier in his example. We are seeing executives who want to perhaps purchase in specific neighborhoods because of associations with certain golf course communities. So in terms of buyer incentives, if we're looking at, provide that as an incentive on the buy side, if the executives are looking at that, or at offering that on the home selling side, is that's certainly something that will help or can help sell a property. Just not really certain on high-end properties whether that is really a priority. Most folks, if it's really a matter of cost, we can offer it on the home sale side, but it really not be something that's really going to make or break the deal. Usually, there may be other sorts of incentives, such as decorating allowances, providing other types of incentives, such as design situations where folks offer a design team to come in and work with purchasers as an incentive on the high-end property. So these are all options that we need to be cognizant of and think outside the box, so to speak, in terms of working with executives and helping them sell high-end properties.
Okay. And we did have a question come in through the chat, actually, I had seen earlier, which was, where do we find an executive-level broker? How are those kind of brokers found, even if you want to just say the Washington, D.C. area?
They're a lot easier than we realize. I'll use one prime example. If you're looking at a specific price range, we work with a number of independent brokers, and ideally, what we try to do is identify the price range of the property and work with the relocation directors, have them help us identify the top selling agents in those specific price ranges. That is one of the primary means of selecting the agents in the right locations. I also want to say that sometimes when we are working with training executives, we'd like to give them at least a couple of options. And so in doing so, what we generally do is provide them 2, possibly 3 agents who work in that price range, and definitely work with executives, high-end properties, give them an opportunity to meet with decision makers and help them narrow down that decision. We also generally ask them to provide or prepare a broker market analysis on the home sale side, so that we can provide them assistance in marketing the home and pricing the home to sell within a short period of time.
Great, Juan, thank you so much for wrapping that up. And David, looks like we're close to time here for a wrap-up. To go back to you.
I appreciate that. I'd like to thank all of you again, Chris, Juan, and Katie, for sharing all your insights with us today. And I'd also like to thank CapRelo again for sponsoring today's webinar. On behalf of Worldwide ERC, we thank you for joining us and hope you've enjoyed today's Learning Zone webinar. Have a great afternoon. You may now disconnect.